Nation's history was for 5 or 10 minutes. We would be, it was kind of like I wouldn't know how to describe it from a game point of view, but it was where we would have different scenarios that we responded to. It was like a create your own adventure sort of, only very, it was more educational, I guess. And so we would really understand on a first-hand level, because we were experiencing for that amount of time. You know, you're going to get sent off to this corner of the room if you say a single bad thing about her, and to represent kind of what it would be like to live under sort of government. But it was an amazing experience for me because it was fun, but it was also meaningful because we saw how we could be in control for that little amount of time. And that was how we learned a lot of history, actually, not just in imaginary countries, but when we were learning about Mexico. Our teacher, Felisa, she was really into Mexican history, so we learned about all the Mexican revolutionaries, which was a little unusual. That was kind of cool, though. And the way that we did that was, again, through that kind of game where we had different scenarios that were represented to us. And so, for instance, this is the government in place. Do you agree with them? Are you siding with them or against them? And then as we went on, we would find out what would happen to us based on what had happened in the textbook, what was happening over history. And this works really well if you want to teach about, at the elementary school level. Obviously you don't have quite the, you're going to get arrested scenarios, but for instance, maybe being, I don't know, what time periods do you study, in?
No, we're just doing anywhere from, I guess coming to the Americas and studying up the Americas. Basically, we don't.
So
get
the
too far
pilgrims.
into-
Okay, so that would be a good one actually for a game where kids get to be the pilgrims, and how do you interact with the Native Americans maybe, or what is your experience? Are you so you might present different challenges, like it's a cold winter and you don't have enough food, so what do you do? How are you going to? So maybe you and that's where maybe a Native American might come in and help, the kind of the Thanksgiving story, but. Yeah, doing it in this game-like way instead of just saying, here's what you have to learn, let's take a test. I found that was a really fun experience for me.
When I did 6th grade, we did when we were doing Egypt, we did Survivor Egypt, and that ran all day. And when we did signs, we would take paper bags and we would, we did a crest, and then we would take names like Sphinx and mix up the letters, and that would be one group, and the tag would hang, and their 4 desks were there. And then throughout the day, we would, intertwine Egypt with math. We did, instead of using 10, and then we did it in science and the mummification, and then at the end everybody went and they made an Egyptian artifact, and we turned our room into, we had mummies and black lights and ice, and it was awesome. I don't get to do 6th grade anymore. It's a little harder for me to do that with 3rd graders because they're not as intuitive, but that was my favorite.
That sounds
when you can get it into the whole thing.
Yeah, definitely.
We just performed Julius Caesar weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
Doing that, and then got into the Shakespearean theater.
Oh, I'm sure. So there was the whole stabbing and everything?
Oh, yes.
Wow, nice.
Stabbings.
I should be saying that. I sound very violent right now. But I find that, actually, I go to an online school, but I was taking 2 classes at my local school last semester, and they were drama and cooking, and drama was awesome, but we didn't get to do that many, fighting. Well,
I hesitated just because of,
yeah, you get people who are
time period we're in and all the violence. But,
yeah.
I kept trying to remind the kids this is what really happened back then. So,
yes.
And we were using plastic knives.
Yeah, and I think that it's valuable for students
Touch them.
because, especially boys, I know that boys are having a hard time in a lot of classrooms because. I'm not sure how much of the studies and everything I believe, but I guess boys are more sometimes a percentage. I know my dad is not into, he's always telling me I'm making overgeneralizations, but I know boys are more kinesthetic learners and stuff. So I guess all the fighting scenes really do bring out that aspect. But also a lot of girls really appreciate the chance to jump around and do that stuff. I know I did. And in, I think with the violence in plays and stuff, using it and making sure that kids understand, obviously this isn't something you wouldn't do in real life, but I think most kids would understand that. I know some of my classmates in drama were just we were doing an improvisation thing, 3 steps I think or something, and so they would always do these mock fighting scenes where they were just rough out, aside from certain people. So back on topic, history, interactive games, great way to do it, having this sort of a cross between this, so you present different scenarios that might have actually happened, like say Irish potato famine, so your potatoes haven't happened here, and then what are you going to do? Here's the different situations, here are your challenges, and then based on the student's reaction, the choices that they make, I find that would be a really fun one to do. And that way you have this combination of the textbook learning, so these are the events that have happened, these are people's reactions to them and what happened to them, but you do it in a way that really makes the student part of the scenario. And since you guys teach the grade and not like separate subjects, then you could have, I think, more tie-ins like with history and writing. If students wanted to write from the point of view of somebody that they were learning about, that would be really fun as well. And maybe if you wrote from the point of view of somebody you were learning about and then acted that out, or that factored into learning about history, that would be cool. So, so writing, history. I'm not qualified to speak on science and math at all. Even at the elementary school level, I would not be super confident like teaching about that. But what?
No, you're too modest about it. You just don't have the confidence, but doesn't mean you.
I'm okay with like. I'm really bad with the stuff that's actually taught at elementary school level, like with the. Isn't it elementary school you learn like pints and quarts and units of measurement?
Yeah.
Always, really bad at that. But algebra, like the equations, that I'm a little better at, which is kind of weird, but that's the way it works, I guess.
Any question inside?
Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
As far as how come it's easier for you? What did you do? How did you make it so that it's easier for you to learn? I mean, was there a way that you went about approaching math that made it a little easier for you?
Well, at this level, I think the reason I'm better at middle and high school math is because I'm fine with it now and I actually kind of enjoy doing some things. When I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I hate math. I would sit at my worksheet. Yeah, my attitude. So that might be why I'm not so great with units and measurements and even fractions and negative
I can
numbers.
say
That's just
something.
memorization.
It's just the time you didn't spend. We, as a
That's
parent,
true as well.
I didn't.
Well, my mom didn't
Yeah.
learn that much math when she was growing up. I won't tell the whole detailed story.
The story is that I gave up too early on my math, and I didn't really focus on Adora's math.
Sure.
So you got to spend the time because she enjoys writing so much, and I just let her go with and reading, writing, and travel around the world.
And,
Now she's spending more time.
I
so
have to spend
her-
like 3 hours on one math
Yes.
lesson sometimes because it's just that.
I did
And
the
also
same
she's
thing with
doing-
my kids for the same reason.
Right, she's doing 9th grade math, which is more challenging than her age.
Well,
You're
because
13,
I skipped
yeah.
2 grades, so I'm in 9th grade. I'm taking algebra, and actually algebra in 9th grade is not advanced at all for a 9th grader, but algebra for a 7th grader, which is the grade I would be, is a little advanced. So I guess that's part of it.
and then combined with your modesty, which is a great,
No, not at all.
Merit.
You've not seen my.
you just have to spend more time, and not everybody is good at everything
But
naturally.
a lot
But
of
it's
it
not
has
your
to be
passion either.
Exactly.
Your
Yeah.
passion is right.
I'm not planning on being a mathematician, but at the same time, I see the usefulness of math. I actually wanted to be an architect for like a couple of years when I was.
Until you found out about
That
math.
it involved math. Yes. And actually, my parents could have really capitalized on me wanting to be an architect. And the reason it was because my teacher at the time was a university student who was studying to become an architect, so I was very inspired. But if they had said, okay, we're going to take something that you really like, architecture and buildings, and let's see how math plays into this, I think they actually could have gotten me maybe more interested. But it was sort of a fleeting.
You still got time. So the joke is, what career Adora end up choosing would be surprising me. What are they?
Workout instructor, because I cannot stand those workout videos. It's like step to the right.
But you're actually good. You
Yeah,
taught me
I can do
some-
a really funny parody of them, but I think that's the most unlikely. And then singer, because I don't play an instrument. My voice is pretty bad when I try to imitate songs. So about my sister, and my older sister Adriana is a really good example of how kids diversify our interests even in the same family, because she writes poetry, but her poetry is totally different. It's free verse. Mine is I love structure and everything. So but showing kids, when I talk to students about poetry, I ask what makes a poem a poem. When you look at a piece of paper, what makes it a poem? And someone said, oh, it has to rhyme. And I said, no, that's not true. Like, I write mostly rhyme poetry, but if you go to, they had dancing fingers on hand. So I said, if you go to the back of the book, you'll see my sister's poems, and they're very free verse. They're very creative. So by working in your classroom, you probably have students who are interested in all kinds of different things. So by using each person's interests to an advantage. So for instance, with reading, students who don't like to read, I say, well, what do you like to do? And if it's, I don't know, skateboard, then they can pick up a book about skateboarding or about a character who likes to do that. There's always someone or something that you can relate to, usually in books. Any other questions? Okay, well, I know that I haven't covered science and math as far as on the creative side, but I think that the important thing to remember with science and math is that we often look at those as very non-creative things because it is a lot of memorizing. You have to do your multiplication tables. But one of the things I loved to do was write word problems that were very creative. And I would write word problems for myself with multiplication or something, and that would get me interested. And in order to write the word problem, I had to understand the concept. So kind of mixing up a little bit, having your students write word problems and say, okay, you want to cover what we've learned about, why don't you write some word problems? And you would obviously want to check them to make sure that they work, but then maybe passing them around, and that could be fun as a creative way to tie in writing and math. Yeah.
Another thing we did is have students actually design their own test kit. They have to understand what you're trying to test somebody, because as the teachers, you write tests, you have all this idea behind it, but students don't always necessarily know what you're trying. So have them reverse that, have them write a test kit. That's very fun.
Another thing that I know, I've read a few education books that say that students who, and I'm guilty of this, but a lot of times we say you're good at this, not so much at that, you're really smart. But those are apparently words that make students feel like your knowledge is set and that you can't progress. I guess the study was that students who were told your brain continually adds new knowledge and your brain can really grow, who learned that and you're working hard versus you're really smart, that they were more in this progressive mindset versus those who were told, oh, you're really smart, you're really good at this, were thinking, oh, I'm just good at this, naturally born that way. And I'm not doing this well because I'm not born that way, when really it's about hard work, I guess. So emphasizing that no matter, and that's what's helped me with math is that I realize the reason I'm better at writing, it's partially because I'm really into it, but also because I'm working very hard at it. So if I apply the same thinking to other subjects. And that way students don't have the excuse of I'm really stupid, which I hear a lot of students say all the time if they don't want to do something. I hate math, I'm too dumb for this. Using those kinds of excuses, if you knock those out of the way by saying anybody can do this, your brain is continually adding knowledge, then I think that really helps students understand their own learning process.
It gets into the self-talk, you give yourself negative self-talk.
Yep. Yep.
Have you ever tried to do something with a group of students that you found out was too hard for them? Or
Yeah.
how do you deal with that in the midst of your lesson or your project? What do you do?
Well, because I'm really gung-ho about writing, so a lot of times I have to remind myself this is a group of students. Even though I was writing all these short stories at 7, I can't expect the same of everyone. So I have to slow down sometimes. My hardest one was when I taught, so I designed this presentation called Response to Literature about writing responses to literature for high school students, so more like 9th through 12th. The class I was supposed to teach it to was 4th grade. That was the hardest one because I realized that these students did not have much experience writing essays. They had maybe just started personal narrative. Their writing itself was maybe needing work, and I was about to ask them to write like 4 pages of writing in response to a book. So that I had to slow down and start by asking really simple questions. What is your favorite book? What do you like about the book? It's good. Okay, how can we add details to that? What made it good? But even then, by asking all these supporting questions, I found that some of them still didn't quite get why are we writing this, what is it going to look like? So I had to definitely give more examples, ask more questions. But because I started so young with reading and writing, I guess I was on a slightly accelerated, and also because my mom was running this after-school program, we had tutors who were really customizing what we were learning to what we knew. So I was reading, apparently the textbook that we were using for American literature was actually like a 10th grade level one, and this was when I was, 9. So it was, when I'm talking to students who are 9 years old, I don't want to compare them to myself at 9. But I try to have high expectations as well, and if they don't meet those expectations initially, then I just, add different questions or examples. And anything else? Oh, and by the way, before the session's over, I need to remember to pass out all the stickers.